some of them, as you usually know, will seek to undo what the current government is doing. And some of them, in novel, think that the political parties seek to bring to board that will be the game changer compared to what its opponents are doing. So I think the categories that you are talking about, I have view as well, and it was clear. We look at the end, so a portion of it introduces new things that we have not seen over the years. A portion of it to also address the effects of COVID-19 on our economy. Globally, government coming up with response mechanisms, been at a point where all governments throwing in the kitchen sink to ensure that we get the economy running. So some of the promises, business incentives, trying to stimulate demand, trying to raise revenue, trying to minimize poverty. Some of these promises are going to be similar across political parties. And some of them are, as you know, during election years, are going to be opposing or kind of undo or try to set up something that is against what the current, for example, abolishing PSHS, kind of increasing the district assembly common fund from 5 to 7.5.
Sorry, you said abolishing free SHS. Did you mean the double track?
Abolishing the double track.
Right.
Yeah, abolishing the double track. So you see, all of these are that set of category. Let's say undo what the current is. So the three broad categories actually are right. So going into the manifesto, you realize that the NPP the NDC from the beginning set out to make a manifesto that touches the basic livelihood needs of the ordinary Ghanaian. So they started with a scout program. They also started with some engagement, the various groups, agencies within the country, from the top institutions to the rank and file in society. So I see in their manifesto a lot of things touching on the basic needs of the people, even from tax incentive rates to even menstrual poverty, touching on the livelihood of the average girl, and also looking at their promise helping the other businesses. They have promised on aged, they have promises for pensioners, they have promises for students, there are promises on child rights, there are also promises that cover a broad spectrum of issues that currently are important. So if you are talking about manifesto that people can relate to it, I think it qualifies as manifesto. So listening to President John Dramani Mahama and looking at how the manifesto to be a people's manifesto, I found a lot of issues as to the critical issues that if they win the election and they are able to implement it, we should see an impact on the lives of people. Yeah.
Right. Now, the big test for any manifesto is not just can they do it, but is it what the people want? Or more importantly, what problem does it solve? Okay. So I kept asking that question with each thing that was mentioned by the former president and his running mate. Now, a couple of them I couldn't answer. For example, the former president says that when they come into office, they will find all the missing excavators and return them to their rightful owners. What problem does that solve?
Well, if you look at, I don't know if you are done, but if you look at the problem by the NDC on setting up the gold board, reviewing the whole idea of small-scale mining and artisanal mining, I think they have a policy trying to...
Dennis, if you don't mind, can I ask you to reposition yourself a little bit? Your line is not the clearest.
Is it better now?
Oh, yes, it's much better now. Thank you.
Okay, sure. So the NDC in their manifesto has a whole lot of on artisanal mining, also revamping small-scale mining. They promise to set a gold board and all of. So you can see if they promise to find the missing excavator, it is in relation to, let's say, resolving small-scale mining or artisanal mining. However, its direct relationship with the problem is that, let's say, a group of businesses have the excavators or, let's say, capital that have been seized by government. It has not been found. So if I'm reviving the artisanal mining and this is still a problem, that businesses have some of the equipment that they are going to use to revive small-scale mining still in possession of government, then it is necessary for me to put up the strength to make sure that I get the excavators back to the road as part of my measures to reviving small-scale mining. So it may not be, let's say, a problem touching on the livelihood of people. However, it is part of policies to revive artisanal and small-scale mining, and even to do it better, and they seek to create a kind of artisanal mining that does not affect the environment. So if these are part of that will be needed to revive the sector, then I'm sure if they are going to look for these excavators and give it back to them, in that policy, there will be a step in the right direction.
Does it not matter that these excavators were seized from people who were mining illegally?
Yes, so it is, but if you look at setting up the gold board, I'm sure, assuming they win the election and they're able to set up the gold board, and the gold board investigates all of this, and there are some level of illegality. That is why we have either the Attorney General's office or any state agency that could represent the state in prosecuting all of this. At the end of the day, we should see that it's not just about were they wrong. If they were wrong, what does the law say in punishing someone who's wrong? That one should. So it's not cast in stone. At the moment we come, they're just calling the owners of the excavators come for the excavators. I'm sure the gold board will investigate all of these things here.
Right. Now, for you, we obviously now we have the benefit of the NPP and the NDC manifestos. We have them both. So for you, looking at where Ghana is today, the peculiar difficulties we have, our currency still struggling against major currencies across the world, a difficulty with growth, particularly because of COVID-19. Job creation, that has been a massive, massive headache in recent times. Looking at where we are today, when you take the two manifestos, which one do you reckon has the most comprehensive approach to solving the real problems of Ghanaians today?
Well, so starting from the basic problem that we have now as a result of COVID-19, our GDP growth has declined from projected 7% to 1.5%. So this also means that business they are folding up, production has declined, income has declined, unemployment, and all. So if there is a strategy to put the country back, then it should start from how do you get businesses running again? How do we get services running again? How do we get culture back to it? How do we get civilization back to it? All of this contribute to creating the jobs that we are, and also raising incomes of people. And government could tax from there. Government could get tax from from business. So what I see the two manifestos is that all of them are trying to create incentives for business. You remember in the NPP manifesto where they promised a lot of incentives for businesses in terms of one, digitization, reducing the cost of internet, and also other social programs to stimulate the work of business. Because what we need now is to stimulate demand so that demand doesn't fall for businesses to struggle. Now, the two of them have programs. If I may refer to the NDC, speaks to reduce the corporate income tax from 25% to 15%, a lot of exemption for small, medium, and large enterprises. They also talk about local competition and also the big push agenda. All of that should stimulate demand or create an avenue for businesses to get back on track. Then the businesses will now employ, and after that, government could tax and also tax from the employed. So all of these will still come to put all of that together. They will create the necessary environment for us to get back on track. However, all of the manifestos, the NPP and the NDC, the NPP also has an approach of even helping individuals. Look at this rent program the scheme they want to create, that people could even borrow from it pay their rent advance and later pay, the graduate scheme that they wanted to also implement, and all of this to protect the average livelihood of people. Now, a lot of people are becoming poorer. If you look at the multidimensional poverty index, a lot of people are becoming poorer. So all of these are policies that could help people either maintain their income levels, create other avenues, and making income. But in all of this, I don't see anything about how we can generate more revenue to help the country get back on track. So the NDC's manifesto is more expected in the outlook. The NDC's manifesto is also expected in that the government is giving a lot of exemptions. Government is focusing a lot of big ticket things that I think if we don't draw the private sector in, some of these things we have for them to implement. So if you compare the two of them, I wouldn't say this manifesto is better than the other. However, what I see is that they all touch the basic needs of people, like their promises on digitization. The NDC is promising to invest in 5G. The NPP has a whole lot of digitization agenda. We've been using our Ghana card as tax identification numbers. That's a way of kind of the tax net and all of that. The NDC wants to invest in 5G, strengthen digital, online or e-commerce businesses, and other things, business that we facilitated through a faster internet and all of it. But when it comes to what extent does all of this create the right revenue? Currently, Ghana is among the countries with a very low tax revenue GDP. You look at the ratio, they are doing around about 12%, and it's going to even be much better in the process of COVID-19. What I did in the two manifestos is where we are the money from to undertake all of this. If you look at the expenditure of our tax revenue now, projecting should don't take it in the next 2 years. We are going to use all our tax to other services or pay compensation, and it will even be very difficult for government to undertake some capital projects and all of that. So what is the next between the two? If you look at the two manifestos, it's revenue. Again, I see a lot of policy mix approach from the two political parties. They are doing a whole lot of things even around the same area. The NDC seeks to establish a Ministry of Youth. While we have authority there, they have a whole lot. There's national apprenticeship program. The 1 million jobs is also hinged on a whole lot of youth employment schemes that they want to do. However, we still have a lot of all of these things running. So if you look at the policy mix approach, kind of doing a lot of things, the NPP also has all of that approach, creating incentives for, let's say, youth employment, some schemes support youth entrepreneurship and all of that. If you apply a policy mix approach and there is no coherence to bring up that synergy, that will lead to us kind of getting much response from all of these data from government, then we will be running at a cost as a country. So that is what is missing. If you look at the two manifestos, there are a lot of policy mix, but there is no coherence. And when it comes to tax revenue, I'm sure because you are getting to the election, they are not talking a lot about taxing and taxing, but they want to kind of create some of an incentive for the people to believe that this is what we can do. But I'm not. All of these promises are beyond their reach. Okay. If they put in the right strategy, they implement the right group to ensure that there is that synergy and coherence between every policy that we draw. We don't kind of reinvent the wheel all over.
Okay, Winston is here. There's something he wants to ask you.
Yeah, so Dennis, talking about revenue generation, and you're juxtaposing that with the fact that there's a talk of, tax cuts. Could it also be the case, and I want your thoughts on this, could it also be the case that in reducing taxes, you're giving companies more money and they could expand, and in expansion employ more, and that could lead to more consumption and by extension taxing that consumption and generating income for the state?
So that analysis is right, but taking cognizance of the effect of COVID-19 on demand itself, realize that now people are not spending or are not back like before. So business production is declining. Now things have been disrupted. So businesses either are folding up or have downsized. Now it's to cut taxes which are very good approaches. If you look across the border, every government is part of every government. For example, in the UK, what the UK government sought to do was take off the salaries of workers, then the companies will step up, and as they get on the recovery, government this is a portion of the income of workers that they pay. But the question is, to what extent is this linked to stimulating demand or increasing demand? Because what brings government revenue for businesses is that there is demand for their product. Now, if there is no demand for their product, the question is, if you cut the tax and their, let's say, or their cost of operating and also other costs that they incur are lower, if they produce and there's no demand for that, then they come to that same square where they are not making enough revenue, and government will be burned because you have spent some money through tax reduction. However, there is low. So I'm sure what we need to also get into is how do we create the demand for them? Like, for example, services in other countries where they have improved on their digital system or e-commerce is booming. Like these retail shops that are online, in a growth in demand. You come to Ghana, so 90% of our retail sector is informal, with a few percent of them online. So looking at all of this, the fact that the very measures that are protecting us from COVID are the very measures that are affecting demand of businesses. So the tax cut itself is not like a magic bullet that resolves everything and brings in revenue. But there should be something that will help businesses get the right demand. Like we are entering the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. What are our businesses doing that when the program starts, when the agreement starts in January 2021, they participate fully, access the right market price, and also increase their production, make more revenue, pay taxes. That is when then the reduction in taxes will make sense.
But then talking about the demand, you'd also would agree that with all the policies that are being put in place, this is to ensure that people, if not to their previous state, are moved closely to their previous state. And there are certain goods that you can't do. I mean, you can't live without them. There certainly will be demand for some of these. There will certainly be demand for food, and there will be demand for other services. And so, by the provision of these services, wouldn't we be getting some more income, more taxes, and by extension, government raising more revenue to embark on some of these, development plans?
Well, it would, but our economy is projected to grow in about the next 3 years. Now, through that, we seek to ensure that there's an environment when people are employed, they get income, and when they get income, then they can spend. But businesses are not out of magic or out of the blue just going to start production just because government corporate income have been reduced from 25% to 15%. Okay. It is going to take some time. So that's what I want us to understand, that all of these, although it may contribute or it may not, it may contribute to government raising more taxes. But if you look at the period we are in, we may not see the benefit now. But what we need to also look at is that how do we increase government revenue? And that is key. How do we increase government revenue at this point? Create a lot of the incentives is not necessarily the tax cut, but in the right business environment, like the licensing for companies, registration fees for companies should be reduced. So it's not only also in terms of digital access, create the right digital environment.
So just a way of clarification and understanding you would prefer a situation where we have the business environment being improved and not necessarily tax cuts.
Definitely.
How about
the tax cut is important. Every country is doing that. It is important. Okay. But if we do all of that and the business environment and let's see supply chains and also the demand that will help incentivize businesses to even expand production are not there. That's what I mentioned about policy coherence. Whilst we are cutting taxes to incentivize them, what are we doing about stimulating consumer demand? What are we doing about creating a very right environment?
Okay, how about the $10 billion push? It's another thing because you're talking about revenue generation here, and over the past week there's been a lot of comments about Ghana's fiscal space, for instance, whether we can accommodate the $10 billion that the NDC plans to spend in the next 4 years if given the mandate.
Okay, so if you look at the 10 billion push, it is also important that as part of the recovery process for COVID-19, infrastructure to infrastructure in terms of physical infrastructure, roads, railway network, industrialized pharmaceutical, agriculture. I see all of these sectors as part of the big push, 1 million jobs creation and all of that. But looking at our current state now, Ghana is not in a position, even from next year, to be able to raise $10 billion to undertake all of these. So the next question, where was the government or the NDC who voted into power get the money? And there are several means. Either they borrow, and if they borrow, currently our debt stock stands at almost 258 billion Ghana cedis.
Right.
If they are to borrow $10 billion, that is approximately in present and 58 billion Ghana. That 58 billion will now add up our debt stock. Again, there are other financing mechanisms that they could explore. They could explore build, operate, transfer. We've seen some of these projects in Ghana before. Example, like in the Tema port, there was COT, I think the relationship with MPS. We've seen some road projects that were also build, operate, and transfer. Then we've seen some projects like, let's see, the Terminal 3. If I'm right, it was borrowed on the balance sheet of the Ghana Airport.
Yeah.
But the question is, are all of the agencies in the right financial position to even borrow on their balance sheet? No. Which investor is willing to undertake a project in an economy that's more likely to recover in 3 years? You understand?
Right.
In 3 years, and engage in build, operate, and transfer. The idea behind BOT is to build the infrastructure, then recover your cost through the revenues coming out of the tax flows out of the project. The economy is set to recover even after 3 years, and even after 3 years, it's not costing so
right.
that the economy is going to recover, the revenues are going to be high, money is going to be high, and every investor will start covering and the cost that they incur during the COVID period. So that's
an important point.
Project, whilst it is very attractive, what it is important for us now, especially the part that talks about digitization, investment in education and all the investment in trade and businesses, they are all important as of now. They are going into a bigger market, African continental future. We need to build our fiscal infrastructure like aviation and railways to facilitate faster movement of goods and people. All of these are important, but we need to put it in the right context so that we don't create more problems for ourselves.
Right.
Now, what is that if government should borrow, then we will be worsening our debt. The past 4 years, this government has borrowed more than 100 billion Ghana cedis. So we need to look at how all of these are debt stock and all that. But currently, with our revenues that can't even cover our interest payment, compensation, and capital projects, I don't see Ghana's tax revenue going beyond less than 15%, even from now, 2023, in that period.
Okay. Now, we've only got time for one more question. I've got literally 1 minute, okay? But there's something I have to ask you. This is the first time that we are having an election in which one of the candidates has been president before. So he has a track record to point to. Do you find, after hearing the manifesto of the NDC, that they might suffer a credibility problem from their critics? Because when they say things like, we're going to launch Operation Sting to check corruption, do you find that perhaps it becomes a bit of a difficult position to defend because during their tenure, corruption was a big problem? After JIDA, SUBA, SADA, and all of these things, from which people are still walking free, if they now come and say, oh, we promise if we win, we're going to do Operation Sting, do you find that perhaps these things might create a credibility problem for the flag bearer and the party as a whole?
Well, while credibility matters during elections and during campaigns, I think that sometimes we need to put some of these issues in the right context. Like you mentioned corruption. This government, while it may have a track record of wastages and leakages like SADA and SIDA, SDEP and other Matis and the rest that you are talking about. It also has a ability in improving corruption perception. If you look at the global benchmark that every country uses to measure its tendency to be more corrupt, and at the end of the period between 2012 2016, our corruption perception index was increasing. So the higher your score, the less likely you are to be corrupt. But in between 2016 to 2020 now, our corruption index has been declining.
This is true, but to be fair, the NPP has not promised an Operation Sting. It's the NDC that has promised it, which is why I'm asking you the question.
I'm saying that if you say they don't have credibility, we need to put it in context. Look at the real data and issues, or let's say global objective benchmark, to make some of these conversations. You can make we can say something, but if you look at global benchmark that critically measures some of these things, you could see that they were performing better. In 2012, our corruption score on the global index was 48. It declined to 47, went back to 45 to 42. But between 2016 to 2020, it's declined to 41 constantly, and now Ghana is ranked 80. And the lower your score, more likely, the more corrupt you are likely to be.
Right. Okay. Well, thank you very much for making that point. Thank you for all of your time with us. We appreciate it very much. You've been hearing from Dennis Asare. He's the internal consultant at Imani Africa. He's been joining us on the phone to do a bit of analysis of the NDC's manifesto. I wish we had a bit more time, but we'll have to come back to that issue later. Right now, though, let's get ready for some great news. Radio gets results. Corruption Watch sticks with the issue until a conclusion is found. You'll be impressed after these.